Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are at the time that you get a chance to watch this. Welcome to week 28. We are wealth builders here. We are dominionaires, and we are launching, growing, and scaling kingdom businesses. And so this week, as promised, we're going to dig into discerning the error. The D in Dominion stands for discern the error. And the scripture this week is from First Chronicles, the 12th chapter and the 32nd verse. And it reads as thus: Of the sons of Issachar, men who understood the times with knowledge of what Israel should do. That one sentence, that's all it takes to describe what made the sons of Issachar remarkable among all the tribes who came to make David king at Hebron. And you can go back and read more of that story in First Chronicles. Yes, it's been raining and thundering and lightning here all day today. We've had intermittent internet, but we are persevering. Just overlook that and listen to what I'm sharing with you today. We are discerning the error. And the sons of Issachar, they understood the times. They knew what Israel should do. 200 chiefs representing 200 men, not warriors distinguished by the size of their army or the power of their weapons. No, they were distinguished by what they understood, by what they could read, by the combination of perception and prescription. That made them invaluable to the king who was standing at a pivotal moment in the history of a nation. Imagine that. I want you to sit with that for a moment. And it's that combination for the moment before we move to the application, because I think that the second half of that verse often gets less attention than it deserves. It is not enough to understand the times. The sons of Issachar also knew what Israel should do. Understanding without a prescription, without a directive, is basically analysis without application. And that's interesting. It's interesting to have analysis, but it's not useful at the moment when you're trying to decide which direction to take. So it's that combination of understanding the error and knowing what to do in response to the error that you're in. That's what the first letter in Dominion is asking you to develop. Not one without the other, but both together, knowing the times you're in and knowing what you should do in those times. And we want to make that a practice. So I'm going to push back on, and I know I can feel the resistance even here because I encounter this a lot in faith communities who are dealing with entrepreneurship, because it shapes how this framework gets applied. Discernment is usually discussed in a purely spiritual register, and I get it. It's as something that happens in prayer through the prompting of the Holy Spirit in the context of seeking God for direction. And that is real. That's what I practice. I hear God. I do what I hear. And that kind of discernment matters, and I'm not diminishing it. But the sons of Issachar, as our role model, as our example, are not described as men who only had good prophetic gifts. They are described as men who understood the times. And that understanding is not exclusively supernatural. It is cultivated. It is the result of paying attention to what is shifting in the environment around you, to what is the demand of the moment. It's being aware of what patterns are emerging that will eventually require a response from you. The most enduring kingdom enterprises that I have encountered are built by founders who hold both kinds of discernment simultaneously. They are praying for direction and studying the market. They are seeking God and reading the regulatory environment. They are receiving prophetic confirmation and doing competitive research. They do not see these as contradictory activities. They see them as the full practice of understanding the time or the era that they are in. And so discernment that is only spiritual produces founders who miss practical signals that their market is shifting. Discernment that is only analytical produces founders who are technically informed but spiritually unmoored. So the sons of Issachar were not one or the other, they were both and. And the leaders who build enterprises capable of genuine, sustainable impact tend to be both and. So there are three questions that we want to deal with when we are analyzing and appreciating our market discernment. And they are questions that are at the heart of what discerning the error requires us to do in practice. So I want to give them to you now because as we overlook the rain that has not stopped all day. So we would either not complete this assignment today or we will press through. And we decided to press through. So I want you to ask yourself these questions, and we're going to walk through them on today because discerning your market or really taking a complete understanding of the marketplace is essential to knowing the era that you're in and knowing what to do in response to that. So here are three questions about market discernment. Question number one is, what problem is the market experiencing that it does not yet have language for? And so let's talk about that. The most valuable businesses are often built around the needs that exist before the people actually have the words to explain what they need. So your work in your what we call customer discovery, and those are the conversations that you have with potential customers. And we've talked about this in previous weeks, but when you hear the same frustration, but it's described in different ways by different people, you're listening to a problem that does not have an organized language yet. And that means there's an opportunity. The second question to ask is, where is the gap between what exists and what is needed? Every market has things being done and things that still need to be done. The gap between those two is where a well-positioned enterprise can create genuine value, not by imitating what already exists, but by serving a need that the current solutions are not providing yet. You provide what's needed. So look for that. The third question that helps us have discernment in the marketplace is ask, where is God already moving that I could structure towards? Now, this is a question that distinguishes a kingdom market discernment from purely secular market analysis. So it's not just where the opportunity is, but it's where the redemptive work is already underway. When God moves, you want to move there. And so, where there is a well built business that can align to what God is already doing, it will accelerate. So these are the questions that we dig into when we're discerning the market. And we do this through the lens of anticipation because we prepare for what we are expecting. So it's not a singular act of discernment. You don't do this once and you're done. It's the practice that you sustain throughout your business. You are constantly doing this evaluation, this inspection of what's going on. And so you want to continually make this a way that you govern yourself in your business so that you are not caught in unawares. So the market lens asks, where are the trends? Where are the consumers shifting? What are the competitive environments that will shape your market? Um, Usually, there are already players in the market, and they're shaping the way the market is going to behave, the way your niche is already attuned to operating in. You need to have awareness of that, and you need to have a foresight into where it will be in the next year to 36 months. We're always looking ahead. So it's not just about what is happening today, but it's what about what's emerging today that's going to set conditions for the future. Then we look at the operational lens, and that's where we evaluate where are their weaknesses, where are their bottlenecks, where are their capacity limits in what your current infrastructure is holding. And is it going to constrain you when you are looking at your revenue? We want to know these things now. So discerning your operational infrastructure is about being honest about what can you actually deliver and what is your business not quite ready for, but needs to start preparing for the next level. And then we ask, we are a business, we're always looking through our financial lens. Yes, we're asking, is our cash flow, is our pricing, is our cost structure sustainable for where the market is heading? A financial model that works in today's conditions may not work in the conditions that are emerging, right? Think about it. Many businesses have had to shift due to the impacts of tariffs, canceling of government contracts, and limits even on access to financing. There have been a lot of changes at the Small Business Administration. These are headwinds. And if you don't know what's coming, you won't have prepared for those headwinds. So discernment here means reading the trajectory, not just what is currently occurring. Some of us have already was preparing for that, knowing what was coming in this most recent election cycle. And so we front loaded to be prepared for the shortages and the constraints that the current administration has been placing on small businesses and especially businesses of people of color. And so these are real, tangible impacts that are negative that we have discernment so that we can be best prepared to shoulder the brunt when these kind of challenges or headwinds come our way. So we want to ask ourselves, what are we ready and able to handle? And what challenges, what obstacles do we foresee running into, and how can we best prepare for them? That's leadership. Leadership is the quality of your decision making. It's knowing, is your team, is your company culture, is your execution readiness on point? Is it adequate for the next season that you're moving into? Is your business agile? The most significant bottleneck in most early stage enterprises is not necessarily the market or the product. It's usually the founder's capacity to manage what the business environment is about to become. That's leadership. And that is a discernment that we have to have so that we grow in our capacity. So these four lenses, our market lens, our operational lens, our financial lens, and our leadership lens, these give us a full picture of what we're working with, and it tells us where we need to address, where we need to shore up, and where we have, um, uh, I would say, where we have grace already working for us. And so none of these areas are optional. They are all important, and each one tells you um, a little bit different, um, a little bit of a different point of view of your whole business and the times that you're navigating. So you have to be able to integrate all of those lenses so that you have that full picture, meaning you understand the time you're in and you know what to do because of the times that you're in. So discernment is ongoing. We don't get a picture and then we're done. The picture is constantly changing. Think of it like the clouds. Clouds are constantly moving. So you need to have a way that you are staying attuned to what's happening and what is going to happen. So what is true in your market today will not necessarily be true in 3 years from now. And you don't want to wait for 3 years to make the shift. You want to be growing and being flexible as the seasons change. The regulatory environment that you navigated at the top of the year, lots of things have changed in the last 8 months. And so even the way that you talk to your customers have changed because in the beginning, you started out messaging one way, but now that you've dealt with a few customers and have learned the way they receive your language, you've modified. So your customer language also changes as you gain in knowledge about your customers. And so competitors who were absent when you first identified this market and you were like, oh, bet nobody else is here. I'll be able to come in and make my mark. Well, people have probably noticed that same opportunity, and now you have competitors to deal with. The cultural currents have changed. We know that I've had many clients who have had to shift now that the gung ho-ness from corporations who were responding to the George Floyd murder, that's shifted now, and a lot of those funds that were like faucets a few years ago, it's drip drip now. And so we've had clients that have to shift their narrative and pivot how they do financing and funding. These are things that we have to be cognizant of, and we don't operate in a vacuum. So this is what Discern the Era is about. It's not a one-time activity that you do only when you first start your business. It's an activity that is a practice that should be built into your leadership rhythm. I always say on a quarterly basis, you want to, lift your head up and kind of check out what's going on around you. You want to have conversations with your customers and with your competitors to make sure that you are not just fulfilling what's right in front of you, but you are anticipating where the market is going. This is the work. The sons of Issachar are our models of understanding what the times mean and having the appropriate response to those times. So build this practice now. And we want to make sure that we are always being ready, right? So we're not going to get ready, we're going to stay ready. So this week, I want you to think about this. I want you to really consider, are you taking advantage of information and knowledge and coupling that with your spiritual prophetic hearing, right? They both go together. And now is the time that we want to hone that skill. So ask yourself, when did I last genuinely assess the environment that my business is operating in? If you haven't done it, now is the time to do it. You should have been doing it already because we've talked about this in weeks past when we were working on our business plan. But now that you've had a few months into working on your business, it's time to look up again and ask yourself, uh, what's going on in the marketplace? What's going on with my business infrastructure? How I operate? What's going on with my finances? Have I implemented a regular financial stewardship management sessions? Have I programmed that into my weekly calendar? And am I growing in my leadership skills? I'm the founder, I'm the CEO of this business. Has my skills grown? If I'm managing people, if I'm managing vendors, what do I need to know so that I can become better at that? This is a good week to ask these kinds of questions. And then I want you to think about, what is the one thing that is true? That's true about my market, true about the regulatory environment that I'm in. What's true that was not true when we first started? What's changed? It's true now, but it wasn't true when I first asked about these questions. And then when you figured that answer out, what do you need to do in your business to respond to this new information, to this new circumstance that you find yourself in? This is an Issachar or Sons of Issachar question. What's going on now that wasn't going on before, and how should I respond now? This is the week to take a check. If this is a time to check yourself, and it's a time to establish that you will continually check yourself because you are the leader and you have to have discernment because you are directing people as you're having dominion. All right. So that's what we're working on this week. Of course, I always want to know what's going on with you. Is this something that resonates with you? And is there some resistance that you're feeling to this? Let me know and let's talk about it. Let's work through it together. So hit me up in the chat. I'll certainly read your messages and or reach out to me directly. I'm happy to talk it through with you. All right, so let's discern this error together. All right, Now, let me put on my executive council hat because always the law just always impacts us. And so we want to have always make sure that we have our legal confidence is built into everything that we're doing. So my tip this week, and let me at least give you one tip. So discerning the error, what comes up on the legal side is the regulatory environment. And this is whether or not you have uh, adequately figured out what you need in terms of certifications, permits, and licensing to do the business that you're in. And so we always want to be in compliance because there is a consequence when we're not in compliance. So there are some industries like healthcare, financial services, food services, childcare, all of these, even real estate, all of these businesses have regulatory requirements. And so make sure that you have identified what those requirements are for you and that you have satisfied those requirements. The last thing you want is an audit. The last thing you want is some kind of notice that you are out of compliance and you have to pause business until you get in compliance. So we want to figure that out ahead of time. And if you've already started business, I'm not saying to stop doing your business, but I am saying that it is a top priority for you to uh, confirm that you are in compliance to all of your regulatory requirements and address those that you are or have not met. That is to be done immediately. Immediately. All right. The other tip I'll share today in regards to discerning the error is about how market conditions get applied through your contracts. And so you've already established a template for your agreements, and you've been operating using those contracts. But when you pause and do your assessment of your market environment and you learn that things have changed, then go back and make sure that your contracts reflect the new market conditions. If you're shifting, go back and make sure all of your documentation has also shifted because we don't want to have a new product, a new offer, a new way that we're handling our clients and customers and our contracts and our public facing documents don't match what we're actually doing in the business. So once you make a shift, then make sure your business and all of your documentations also make that shift. All right. So this is another area where things could be out of alignment. Not that you're doing anything wrong. You probably have shifted in the way that you're handling your customers and your vendors because you have assessed the market conditions and recognized that you need to make a change. So you're doing things better, but your agreements and your purchase order can be considered an agreement. An actual contract is an agreement. If those haven't changed to match what you are saying and how you are treating your customers and your vendors, then we have a disconnect. And that is just another opportunity for something to go awry. So we want to always be thorough. And when you change one thing, make sure everything else that needs to change also changes. All right. So those are my two tips for this week. Discerning the error, that's the one thing to get right from the top. That's why it's our number one pillar, because everything else falls underneath that. And if we don't know where we are, where we're going, and the challenges that we're going to face, then we're going to make missteps. So we want to discern this era of time and then respond appropriately. Both go hand in hand. All right, see you next week. Next week, we're going to talk about obedience. I know not the most fun stuff, but it's the stuff that makes your business sustainable, well grounded, and positioned to grow and scale. And that's what we want. I'll see you next week.